are on Facebook.
Yeah, you start.
This is Jillian Mayberry. We are preparing for our Therapy Thursday weekly broadcast on mental health topics. Therapy Thursday is brought to you by Affinity Counseling Services and A Lovely Pause. This is a test.
Affinity Counseling Services is located in Piggott, Arkansas, and Kennett, Missouri. We currently have 3 therapists in our office and are taking new clients. To join our sign-up sheet, visit counselingwithaffinity.com, and to find out more, you can call me, Kindred, at 870-324-5122 or 573-840-0440. Thanks.
And A Lovely Pause is a local nonprofit created to provide community education, awareness, coping skills, and support for those with PTSD and other trauma-related disorders. Subscribers will be receiving a free communication style assessment bundle in their emails. Should be coming up this week. So sign up at A Lovely Pause, PAUSE.com, or hit the sign up button on our Facebook.
Therapy Thursday normalizes discussing mental health topics in a safe, supportive environment because not being normal is normal.
Welcome, everyone, to Therapy Thursday, our weekly installment here at Affinity Counseling Services, where we talk about different mental health topics from a personal and professional perspective. My name is Matthew Yount, lead therapist and president here at Affinity Counseling.
I'm Jillian Mayberry. I'm the intern here at Affinity Counseling Services.
I'm Stacy Diggs. I am marketer for Hive Minds Marketing and vice chair on A Lovely Pause.
I am behind the camera, as always, taking your comments, questions, and concerns. Kindred, and I'm the office manager for Affinity and the secretary of the board for A Lovely Pause. Look, I have a lot to say.
You do. You've had a lot of titles. You have a lot of responsibility. You also love your hair, by the way.
Thanks.
Yes, the blue.
It's starting to fade a little bit. It's about time to dye it. But
Yeah?
you know what? Kiefer told me I can dye his hair when I dye my hair.
What?
Ooh.
We can be cute matching.
That's what I was going to say. Is it going to be the same color as each other?
Yeah, we'll be cute. We'll be the cute matching couple.
Are you going to go blue again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah,
he's going to have blue
I still
hair.
have plenty of blue. Yeah.
Y'all are going to be adorable.
I know. He should let me do his beard too.
Oh
But
my
if you're
God.
going to do his
Too
hair,
much.
you might as well do his beard.
Yeah, it should match for sure.
Or I could dye it black. That would be fun.
Well, now we're going to have to put pictures up on Facebook just so everyone will know.
I'm excited about it.
Well, we have Jillian joining us today. My wife was not able to make it, so thank you for filling in.
You're welcome. I'm very unprepared.
That's okay. We're all unprepared for this. We're always unprepared. How much preparation do you think we do? We just sit down and go, okay, what are we talking about today? And then we talk. So
Every single time. We're
Every
like, what is
time.
the topic today?
I have
oh, yeah.
zero time for prep, so you get what you get, and it's just all off the top of our head, thank goodness.
Makes it more natural.
It
this
does.
way.
It also doesn't mean it's accurate, but it is more natural. Well,
Well, it fits this topic today, right?
yeah, effective communication. That's what we're talking about. We're going to be going into talking about what actually makes communication effective. We discussed a little bit last week about why communication can be so difficult, all the different barriers that get in the way of it. And we didn't even have an opportunity to list all of the potential barriers that could be in the way of communication. So, effective communication, I think we should probably define what it is first before we start working on trying to understand how you develop it. If you think of a communication as being effective, how would you know that you actually got across what you meant to say? How do you know if you conveyed what was actually intended to be conveyed?
I'm usually looking for like a certain kind of response or reaction from the other person, I guess. And if they're seeming like it's not clicking, I'm like, I don't think I said that right, or something didn't come out right.
So congruency in what you said versus the response you got. Okay.
So when I think of effective communication, I think knowing your audience helps too, right? So like, if you're talking as a so you guys are in the counseling field, you're talking to another counselor, you might use a different language than you would use with a client.
Yes.
Right.
Sure.
So knowing who your audience is and how you're like conveying those thoughts, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you're to create that effective communication, you may have to alter the words you use, the speech patterns you use, the acronyms that you use, the little like speech that goes along that may be different in one place than another. But how do you know that your message landed? How do you know you got it? I mean, that's what makes it effective, right? It landed with the audience in some way, shape, or form. You can go by reaction. But reaction may not always be enough because the nonverbal cue may tell you, oh, that person, they gave a congruent response. That's what I figured that they would do. And
Right.
so they must have known exactly what I was talking about.
Like if I don't know what someone says and they've already repeated it a few times, I just go along with it. So
Smile and nod.
definitely nonverbal cues can be wrong.
Yeah, especially if you're an agreeable individual who just wants people to feel good. Then you're like, yeah, sure.
Or to shut up.
Well, that's part about it being an agreeable individual. You're not going to tell them. You're just going to agree.
I may not agree though. I may just ignore them and pretend I didn't hear him. Huh? What'd you say? Play stupid.
Yeah, you can do that for sure. And so that's why the person's response may not always be a best indication. Because how many times has your partner like nodded their head and like, yep, got it.
Yeah.
And they didn't get it. They didn't even intend to
I've
get
done
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty of times. So we get this opportunity to think that we've landed, but we don't absolutely know. So I guess another way you can look at is communication effective? Is there an outcome that you were trying to get? Does it actually happen? So, but then again, that's a downstream effect. We have to wait for the outcome to see like, no, that's not what I was talking about at all. Or wait to see if it didn't get done and then have to go and follow up like, okay, did you not hear what I said? What's happened here? Because I totally thought you did. And one of the things that can get in our own way is we may be in such a hurry that we're so desperate to just move on to the next thing that any indication from the other person that looks like they got it is enough for us to go, all right, you got it. Good. I'm moving on then.
Right.
Only for us to be like frustrated or disappointed later on. So it's really hard to know if what you said actually landed with the other person. So I think one of the tools that we use in communication practices where we're really wanting to make sure that the other person got it. You have to be careful how you say this, but it's good to say something like, okay, so what did you hear me say? Or what did you take from what I just said? You have to be very careful not to be condescending about that because if you're already frustrated with the person, it can easily come across as like, okay, so tell me what I just said.
Right.
Did you get it? And so we have to come across as we're not being condescending in a way that is going to hurt another person's feelings.
Yeah, like, did that make sense?
You sound like you've said that before. Yeah. Did you get it? Was that hard for you? Okay. So we want to make sure that the other person is understanding because then we want them to repeat back to us, yeah, here's what I heard you say. You want me to go do this. Now, we don't ever or hardly ever take the time to actually do that. And we'd be a lot better off if we actually did. We don't want to do it all the time, though, because it seems so redundant and it can get frustrating to people if you're constantly questioning their capability to understand you. So people are so weird. It's like the most effective things that we could use will start to make people upset if we continue to use them over a long period of time. Because people are like, what do you think I am, dumb? You keep asking me if I hear you. These work. Yes, I hear you. You don't have to ask me every time. So we have to save it for important things.
Right.
And that's all. But now other things that we can do, or we can write things down.
That helps me a ton.
Yes.
Yeah, I need lists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why, whenever I start working with companies and including our own, whenever we reach, there's a certain level of capacity that you can do with tasks that don't require a list. Like one or two things is really about it. It's like, here's the one or two things I need you to do. And that's only in circumstances where that other person doesn't have 15 other one or two things that need to be done from other things that are responsibilities in their life. And that's even maybe that things that need to be done in the next 15 minutes. It's like, here's the 1 or 2 things I need you to do by then. Anything past that probably needs a list. So we implemented long ago action item lists. Here are the things you need to get done. Here's who's responsible for it. Here's when it needs to be completed by. It's a guide. It really helps you just try to understand and organize yourself. And then because the speaker doesn't even always remember all the tasks that they give other people. There's been plenty of times I've asked people to do something, and then I saw it on the action item list. Like, did I ask for that? I guess I did. It's on there, so I must have asked for it.
Yeah, and that follow-up communication that we do, where we check in about that list, like we have, our check-ins, and it's not like to write everybody's butt, like, did you get this done? It's just like it's like a part of a continuation of conversation. It helps to keep us on track with these, things that we were prioritizing as important.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and so it's all like in how you use it. I mean, there are times where we have to use things as a way to like, hey, we're off base. Things are getting procrastinated too much. Because I do that with myself sometimes. I look at my own list and go, I have overloaded myself. Dadgummit, why did I agree to another thing? I don't have time for another thing. Yet here it is. And now I've got to figure out how to organize myself around this. But what that also helps me with when I'm thinking straight is my capability to know my own capacity. So when other people do ask, hey man, can you do this? I can look at my list and go, no, I cannot.
Right.
Not at that time. Do you have a different time? I think we had to go through that this morning
Yes.
with somebody. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I know you have clients. So do I. And so we had originally agreed on a time. You want to move it? Cool. You have to move it to a time I can fit into because I'm a busy person too. So we have these things that help us as tools to communicate more effectively. And part of that effective communication is learning ourselves and using those tools to know like, oh, okay, that's what I have going on. Or that's what I said I would do. And now I have something to use to hold myself accountable to. So when we look for real understanding, how do you know if somebody's actually totally understood you in the sense of their nonverbal communication? Or let's even go with verbal. Like, what do you look for to truly know that somebody that understands?
Maybe they ask questions along the lines to get a better understanding.
They're engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. So they're actually engaged in the conversation.
Yeah.
So they ask questions. They really look like their eye contact has been pretty consistent. It hasn't been I'm staring through you or I'm staring away from you. It's the engaged eye contact. So you were looking for everything that indicates that the person is engaged. Now in counseling, here's one of the key differences you need to look for when you're trying to figure out if a client has truly understood what you said. You're going to hear this a lot. And I'm sure we all hear this a lot anyway. You're going to hear it in other places too. You're going to hear it when you're negotiating with people for services. You're going to hear this phrase, "You're right." Okay? Mm-hmm. So "you're right" is such a wonderful thing to hear because it's like, oh, good. They know I'm right. I knew I was right. Now they know I'm right. But I will tell you that the vast majority of the time, "you're right" does not mean you're right. When you say you're right to somebody, what do you mean most of the time when you say you're right?
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, what is going to end this conversation? Oh, you need to be right now. Well, I don't want to talk anymore. So, yeah, you're right.
Slap that "you're right" on there.
Or I'll use "I hear you."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. It's like non-committal, like, okay.
I don't agree with you, but the words have been heard.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's
Right,
another
that's
one
another
too.
one.
It is. So we have these things that we use that it sounds like we're agreeance, but we're really not. And what we want is the conversation to end, no more conflict to happen, and we just want it to stop in a way that we hope the other person is just going to drop it eventually and we're never going to talk about this again. So we never really want to we never want to stop at "you're right" or "gotcha" or "I hear you" or anything like that, because we know that the communication has been ineffective to that point if that's where we're at. It's a subtle difference, but the thing that you really want to look for more than anything is the idea or the words "that's right." And it is a weird difference. But when somebody goes, that's right, or that's exactly right, especially if you get the exactly in there, then you know you have hit right on the head what the other person was trying to convey. And then if they feel like they've been understood in that moment, they're engaged. They light up. They're like, yes, that's exactly what I was trying to get to. You understand me. And people love more than anything to be understood.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot when sitting in sessions. Like, you'll say, "This is what I'm hearing you say," and they're like, "That's exactly what I'm trying to say."
Yes. And when people get that, they're like, you understand. I like you. And it's like, okay, we can get some work done now because somebody finally understands.
So it seems like that might be a good way to get the engagement part, right? Is like getting that like connection made initially, right? Where people feel like you guys are on the same page, that you guys have an understanding of each other, that you get them, right? Because like I feel that like when I feel understood by somebody, I'm like immediately more engaged in whatever conversation we're having.
Yes. So, and you're going to see this a lot when you're doing marketing for people. You're going to put things in front of people that they're going to be like, oh, that's nice. Yeah, I like that. And then you're going to see them go, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. That's right. That's what I wanted right there. And then they're going to love it. So they're going to see, and you're going to have to know, like, it's going to be so tempting to go like, well, they said they liked it. And so I guess it's good enough. Oh, to just say, okay, well, good. I can put that to the side. Or go like, okay, I hear you say you like that. But, it seems like something's missing. It seems like something's off here because I get that you like it, but it doesn't seem to really hit home with what you're trying to convey. And so we got to be careful in effective communication not to take the easy route and go, well, they said they understood, so that's good enough for me.
Right.
And go like, yeah, they're not there yet. They're close, but they're not there yet. So the key is, one, trying to make sure that the person is engaged, but and the understanding is there. But the thing that I try to shoot for is I want to understand the person before I try to be understood. Because a lot of times we are pushing way too hard for people to understand our viewpoint. So we want to push like, I need you to understand me. And I'm going to push until I think you understand me. And that makes people like, ugh. And so if you make people feel more comfortable by understanding them first, then they're engaged, then they're far more likely to want to try to understand you and be way more compliant. And you can actually get people to work on changing their mind by understanding them first.
So when I was growing up, we moved around all the time, and this is probably something with counseling too. I mean, obviously it would be in counseling, but moving around a lot, like you had to like make new connections with people often, and something that I learned over several moves is a good way to connect with people earlier and in a more significant way was to ask questions of that person and have them start talking about something about them, right? And people like, and then continue those questions, right? Like those leading into other avenues of conversation. And it helped me to know who that person was more, but also then they, were feeling like understood, which I imagine that's, counseling too, right?
It is.
Like
It's a big part of it. Yes, absolutely. Well, because counseling is, I don't care what technique you're using. The technique is going to be ineffective if you do not develop a trust relationship with the individual first. Most of the studies that are out there that are work on identifying what's most important in therapy, it's almost always trust first. You can use a subpar therapeutic technique and still get a better result if you have a high level of trust with the client than using a very effective technique with a low level of trust. So the trust defines what is possible in the relationship, and that's any relationship. So that's going to be in a business relationship, in a personal relationship, a therapeutic relationship. There has to be a level of trust that has been developed, and that trust has to be at least sufficient for what it is that you're trying to get accomplished. So deep personal feelings that a person is talking about, you have to have a deep level of trust.
Sure.
The weird part about like a therapeutic relationship is it's very one-sided. I'm trying to get you to trust me. I don't really need to trust you. You need to trust me more than I trust you. I need to trust that you'll show up, that you'll follow the basic rules of the place, that you pay your bill on time, whatever. But that's pretty like low level. All you got to do is follow most basic social rules and we're cool. But you need me to follow a much deeper level of trust and be able to show you that I can do that, because I have to be able to be attentive, be aware, be responsive, be engaging, and also be a person that can listen to your deepest, darkest thoughts and not express them to anybody else ever.
Right.
And that's so hard for people to find, because most people that you talk to about your stuff, they go tell it to somebody else. Even they go tell it to the person they trust, and that person go tells it to the person they trust, and eventually it gets somewhere. And, in your therapist, it's just kind of supposed to be, okay, this is where your dark stuff goes to die. So get it out.
And to not feel judged
Yep.
whenever you're expressing it, because you're not going to express that to somebody if you feel like they're going to judge you about
Exactly.
it.
And maybe not. Okay, so some people expect I tell you my deepest secret, and you tell me.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah, some people want that type of engagement, but they're not going to get it.
Definitely not.
No.
Right.
And every now and then you'll see people, you're not going to find this a lot in therapy, but that happens with kids more than anybody else I've noticed. Kids want to know a lot because kids are just curious. But most adults are not going to try to question you about your stuff. But some do, especially the ones with personality disorders. They really want to know stuff about you because they need it to use later. Or they need to make sure that they can find some way to knock you down. If they put you on a pedestal, they got to have some way to knock you down later. Yeah, they need ammo for you. But most people are not going to ask you about your stuff other than your basics. Are you married? How long you been doing your job? Things like that. But rarely do they ask you so have you ever done this? Or they do, but every now and then, if it's nothing a big deal, I can yeah, sure, nope, never had that experience. But most of the time, it's hey, we have to keep this is a one-sided relationship here. This is your time. You're paying for me to help you. My stuff is irrelevant. So what you got?
Yeah.
But that they can trust you without that's important.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
I was just thinking, with you made that comparison of kids, they just naturally are going to ask each other a bunch of questions and get really deep and into whatever it is, and as we get to be adults, not talking about in the therapeutic side of
Sure.
it, but I hear a lot of people say it's so hard to make friends as an adult, right? It's hard to meet those new people and stuff. And I think it is because a lot of times we stay on those more easier, surface level conversations, and connections. And that deeper communication is something that we're more reluctant to get into as adults generally.
Yes, we are.
Meeting
and
people.
We are and we aren't. It's so weird. People will tell you everything about their life in the matter of 30 minutes if you just show the right body language, give the right responses, and appear genuinely curious. Most people will tell you a lot about themselves. It's not hard to get people to talk about themselves. It's just that we don't set up the conditions most of the time where people will talk about themselves. So people talk to me all the time, and if I just even look like that I'm genuinely
Have you met me?
yes, I have met you. Again, that's not a blanket statement. Yeah, not everybody will, but people will tell you a lot about themselves if you just even look genuinely engaged. For a moment, they're off to the races because most of the time they don't have people to talk to, and people really do want to be understood. Or all the people that they have to talk to, their communication hits barriers and it never gets past those barriers, and so they're well, I guess I don't have anyone to talk to. And if they can get past a barrier with you that they have with others in the first 10 minutes, whoa, this is an amazing conversation. And for us, it's yeah, this is just another conversation because this is what I do all the time. So it's very weird for people to have those genuine interactions that get down deep, and we need it with one another because it does help develop a relationship. The hard part about being a therapist is keeping it in that framework. You've got somebody who's telling you everything about themselves, and this is why you have to be an ethical human being, because you could easily step outside of your ethics at a point and really take advantage of somebody who's so vulnerable in that moment because they have opened up and they're not used to that. So you have to keep a framework that's yep, not your friend, not here to interact on anything else. When you're here, you're the most important person in the world. When you're gone, I'm not going to think about you again. And as soon as the session's over, we're walking to the door, we're out, it's done, and I'm on to the next person. Mm-hmm. And so you have to keep a framework of you are an incredibly valuable and important individual, and I will never think of you outside of this circumstance. And that is a weird line to draw with people.
Sure.
Because we're typically in relationships where if we do say something meaningful, it's to somebody that we're really close to. And so the client may start to feel closeness, and then you have to recognize it and find ways to draw boundaries with it and keep them in that box. You have to keep yourself in that box. It's a weird dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. So for regular folks, right? Like, they want to increase their regular folks.
Oh, no,
People that aren't therapists.
lay people.
Lay people. So like, let's say we want to increase like our ability to communicate with people. Like we often find ourselves in, especially like let's say work environments or something, and we're wanting to like translate something better. Like those little keynotes that we can like be like, okay, keeping these things in mind, right? Like layperson stuff. So
Yeah.
What would be some tips?
Keep your emotions out of it as much as possible. Not that your emotions aren't important. It's just that grand displays of emotion or even moderate displays of emotion often get in the way of things. So mild to no levels of emotion as possible. Keep your emotions centered and in check if you can do that.
How do you do that?
Yeah,
Follow-up
that's
question.
No, it's a very good question. It really is. One,
You say it. It's one of those things easier said than done. I feel like.
yes, it is, but there are some ways to do it. So, one, do not get yourself engaged in a conversation when you're at your most emotional, or one that you have been saving up. That's like, I've got to talk about this because I should have talked about it, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, a year ago, whatever it is. You probably need, if you have a conversation like that, you probably need to go have it with somebody that is a neutral party. So you can like get your emotions out and think your things through, and then you can come back and be a bit more logical about it. So don't store it all up and then be like, now's the time, because that's not going to work.
That
I do
other
usually
person,
go talk to another person.
Yes, yeah.
they will probably match your emotions and get you even more irate.
Yep, or escalate them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one way to do it.
I'm
yes.
always like second questioning myself, so I always go talk to somebody else first.
Yeah, to get a
before
different perspective. Sure. And that's not
I'm
a bad
like,
thing
am
at all.
am I being crazy right now? I think I'm crazy right now.
Having that person to process with is very important for sure.
Yeah. The other way you keep your emotions out of it over time with enough practice is you learn to focus on whatever you're talking about and not the person. In most circumstances, this works. So if we're trying to solve a problem, I'm trying to focus on the problem, not the person. And we're just going to keep it to, we're trying to solve this, not fix you. So that's a more effective way to go about it, too.
Yeah.
So we have that capability. Then the next thing that we want to do is, once we have tried to keep our emotions out of it as much as possible, we want to try our hardest to make sure we know what points we're actually wanting to make. It is not easy to know what you really want to say, and it's not easy to know what you even really want. A lot of times we say we want something, that's not what we really want. That's just what we have focused on because we don't know how to communicate the thing we really want. And we see this in counseling all the time. People come in like saying, I need help with this. And then by the end of the session, they're like, well, I guess I really need help with all of those things.
Yeah.
Or I never really understood how much those things actually affected me. And-
yeah, the underlying factors that we're unconscious about. Yeah.
And that's so hard because if it's like, if I'm unconscious about them, then how in the heck am I ever going to be conscious of them enough to have communication with another individual? So it's probably best, again, if you have a third party to think it through or to stop. And I kind of think like, here's a checklist I kind of go through is like, okay, if I say this and I get a response, is that going to make me happy? Probably not. So I could get a response on that and they would agree, but would I still be upset? Okay, then that's not what I'm really wanting. So I may think I want that, but I guess I don't. So what is it that I really want? And I'll start just asking myself enough questions to try to dig down to find at least something closer to the root cause of the problem that can be resolved or worked through or talked about. So I need to know what it is that I really want. And a simple thing an example of this could be like I could try to communicate something and say like maybe to my partner, it's like we should really like go out and let's go get something to eat. Okay. Now, what I could be saying is I'm hungry and I want to go have food. What I could be also saying is you don't give me any attention anymore, and I feel like I'm only like second or third on your list, and I really want time with you. And what I really want now is not you to say, okay, let's go eat, but what I really want you to say is, hey, I really want to spend time with you, honey. And you know what? Instead of going to something to eat, let's actually go do this. And so I'm setting myself up for an expectation that I'm going to be let down on because I'm not asking the right question.
Beating around the bush.
Yes.
Well, I feel like, especially, I mean, I don't know if it's with men as much because I'm a woman. So, but like, I look a lot in effective communication, like that whole knowing your audience thing. But like, I look at subtext of like what people aren't saying maybe, and like trying to intune, like, well, these things were going on before, and then I said this, and so they might have took it this way, and then like I have all of this like background information that's going on while I'm communicating, which sometimes is not entirely accurate. Sometimes though, it's like hitting points that like I do need to keep in mind. It's a fine balance.
It's hard to filter between those things.
Neurotic thinking and like also being like in tuned with the person. So I don't have that balanced, y'all.
I would think the last point I'll give on this is don't try to have multiple conversations all at once. Because a lot of times people go into a conversation and then it trails off to another one, then another one, then we're talking about 10 different things. And if you're just having a casual conversation with no real point to it other than to communicate and kill time, that's fine. We're just jumping from story to story. But if we're really trying to solve an issue or better understand something, I see this with couples a lot. They try to have 15 fights at once. And they get so frustrated that they just shut down. And then, well, that's another one that we've got to add to the pile. And now it's going to be 16 fights at once the next time we have an argument.
Always is and never's is.
Yes.
I hate those.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, leave the absolutes out of it as
Yep.
much as you can. Yeah, you always do this. You never do this.
Yep.
Great way to make somebody very upset and frustrated because they've always got an example of a time where they actually did the thing you said they never do. But you're like, well, yeah, but there's that one time. That was it. You don't do it enough. and now we're on to a different form of the conversation. Now we're just trying to win.
Yep.
And it becomes about that person's character instead of the task at hand, right? Which is like, I mean, how do you then you're like trying to defend your character instead of just having a conversation about whatever that issue is.
Yes. Yep. So, if you're needing help with communication, we are here to help with that. You can reach out to us at Affinity Counseling Services, AFFINITY, on Facebook. Or you can contact us at our Arkansas location here in Piggott, 870-324-5122, or at our Missouri location in Kennett at 573-840-0440, or you can reach us online at counselingwithaffinity.com. We are doing telehealth, so if you are located anywhere in Arkansas and Missouri, we are happy to work with you. We are licensed in both of those states, so we can do telehealth, and I am able to do EMDR therapy through telehealth. So if you're dealing with something that has been affected by trauma, and that's where your mental health issues come from, EMDR therapy is great for that. We're also just about to onboard another therapist for our Kennett location, so we'll be able to work with the clients there more effectively on the waiting list we have and get that cleared out pretty soon. So is there anything else that we need to address?
I think that covered it.
Well, we're going to have a really interesting moment here because Kindred had to go take a very important phone call for her, and I don't know how to shut off Therapy Thursday. So we can sit here and babble, or maybe Stacy can figure this out.
All right.
I'm glad somebody else knows the computer system. But
Say bye.
all right.